everybody, it's Stewart A. Swerdlow
and Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow
for Expansions.com, and this is the Expansions News Podcast for the first week of July 2016. And I will wish people in Canada a happy Dominion Day weekend, and you Americans happy Independence Day.
Well,
whatever that's worth.
My blog is about freeing yourself, and I am free, so hopefully you're participating in that because we have good discussions started already.
Of course, we could also tell stories about how Dominion Day and Independence Day are just a bunch of scams anyway.
Maybe.
But we won't do that today. Let everybody enjoy a nice holiday weekend.
Plus, it's our upcoming anniversary.
Yes, 7/7 is our anniversary. Again, you have a couple of days to get gifts in the mail. If they could send overnight, maybe, speedy delivery.
21 years together.
Yes, 21 years together. And actually, that's like an affirmation, 21 times.
So that means we can only get better, right?
Yeah, exactly, correct. But, okay, we need to get to the news. Because I always have interesting news, but this was particularly interesting to me. Because, last week or 2 weeks ago, I kind of gave an expose on Hillary.
Remember, I was gone for that.
Oh, were you? Oh, and then I did something, I think, another time on Trump.
Of course, they're cousins anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, but this, I want to talk about Obama, because
he's related to them, too.
Yeah, he looks like them, too.
They're all related.
Yes. Well, actually, Missy, you're related, too, because you were cousins with Jacqueline Kennedy.
Bouvier.
Yes.
I'm a Bouvier.
She's Jacqueline's cousin. And anyway, Obama, there's been a big thing on the news for over a year, maybe a couple of years, about how he never says anything to offend the Muslims. He's over, and we know that he went to a Muslim school in Indonesia when he was a child. He has been giving speeches in Arabic countries saying that he is a Muslim. And then, of course, here he says he's a Christian. He has like this Michael Jackson thing where he doesn't know what he is. Yeah. And, of course, we don't know what Michelle is. Well, actually, we do know what Michelle is. Well, I have a story about her, too. But let me talk about Mr. Obama, because this week on CNN, there was a former Department of Homeland Security officer by the name of Philip Haney, who gave an insider's perspective on the Obama's administration avoiding offending Muslims even at the expense of national security. And Haney says that his experience as a whistleblower enabled him to write a new book called See Something, Say Nothing. A Homeland Security Officer Exposes the Government's Submission to Jihad.
Well, and this cannot be written unless the higher-up handlers wanted it out there.
Well, we'll see. This might be part of the sabotage I've always spoken about. For example, in 2009, his superiors made an odd request regarding valuable information that this Haney had gathered and entered into the DHS electronic database with the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah. And they told him he was to eliminate all the information in 850 records that he put into the system regarding the Muslim Brotherhood group.
And 8 and 5 is a 13.
And the Obama administration did not wish to investigate the Muslim Brotherhood members as terrorists because they were relying on this Muslim Brotherhood to give information on other so-called terrorist groups. But 3 years later, in 2012, the administration of Obama purged all 67 of Haney's records.
Another 13.
Yeah, that's true. Dealing with the Muslims associated with a movement known as, this is important, Tablighi Jamaat.
Never heard of that one before.
Well, neither do we. They always come up with these things that we never heard of,
and
then they make it sound like it's always been there.
Right.
Yeah. Only this time, he said, they didn't just modify the information, they eliminated all of the records completely out of the system forever. And then they investigated Haney for putting the information in the system, even though that was his job to do that.
It sounds like that's what they do to people.
Very interesting. And the pattern continued, he said, after the recent attack in Orlando, when the Justice Department, and I saw this on the news, the Justice Department initially redacted all of the shooter Omar Mateen's references to Islam and ISIS from a transcript of his 911 call. He called 911, made all these references to Muslim terrorist group, and then in the news they just omitted those words.
I wonder why.
Yeah, why? Because they're full of crap, and in fact, and now here's where it gets interesting, because this Mateen, this guy who killed all these people in Florida, he went to a mosque that was related to the Tablighi Jamaat group. So,
which we never heard of before.
So he said, if the information had not been eliminated, the Orlando massacre could have been prevented. So that means they wanted it to happen. And he says, and I quote Haney, "I can't explain to you the ideology or the worldview of this administration that makes them so adamant to protect Islam from harm by addressing it in its true nature." And that's something that's a very sensitive topic, because all these people are saying it's really a peaceful religion, blah, 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 and then others saying, no, it's violent. Well, they promote jihad. They tell people to kill the infidels and to convert the world. I'm sorry, but that's what it says in the religion. Now, he says Islam is not just a religion, but a system of law called Sharia. You've heard of that. That Muslims who adhere to fundamental teaching wish to establish all over the world. And he believes, this Haney believes, that America is in a battle between the U.S. Constitution and Sharia law. And according to Haney, it's for Americans to become more familiar with the Constitution, but they don't teach it anymore. Nobody learns about the Constitution. I don't even think our children learned about the Constitution. I don't think my older children even learned about that. Because he says, if you become more familiar with the Constitution, you will be able to see more clearly the points of conflict between the U.S. Constitution and Sharia law, and then you can discuss it without fear of being called a racist or a bigot or an Islamophobe. And I think that's very interesting, because in the United States and in many Western countries, like for example, you can't say anything about Jews, right? Because then you're an anti-Semite. Well, now you can't say anything about Muslims because
That's
you're an
true.
Islamophobe.
And the Jewish people, they talk about, if you're not Jewish, then you're goyim and you deserve to be eliminated or enslaved.
Well, they don't consider goyim to be humans. Only
Yes.
Jews are humans and the rest are not.
Right. And then even in Christianity was about war and taking over people.
Yes, and I'm going to
forcing
talk
their
about
race.
that in my September Spectacular, because there's a very unremembered passage in the Bible where Jesus initially said, I came with the sword, not for peace. It says that. Anyway, in many countries in Europe and Asia, they're going through the same or similar issues in regard to the Sharia law versus their own country law. Now, related to that, we know what happened recently in Dhaka in Bangladesh, which I was in Bangladesh actually a couple of times. It's really a horrible place. It's on my do not ever return list.
So we're not going there to celebrate our anniversary or your birthday.
No, but we can get a very cheap hotel now for my birthday in Bangladesh. But ISIS, or 7 members of their group, hacked to death 20 foreigners in a restaurant in the Bangladesh capital of Dhaka, and shouting, of course, Allahu Akbar. That's like on every news story about these things.
That's got to be a programming trigger.
They were attacked in a bakery called the Holy Artisan Bakery in the city's diplomatic quarter. Most of the hostages were killed mercilessly by sharp weapons. They were chopped up alive. That sounds like a peaceful religion. I never heard of other religions doing such things.
Well, Christianity did
They
terrible
didn't chop
things.
people up alive, as far as
Yes,
I know.
they did.
They
did
tortured
that,
them.
They did that
the
to the
Inquisition,
Wall of
and all that
Vengeance.
stuff.
Yes, they did.
Anyway, the survivors claim that only the people who were able to recite passages from the Quran were able to live. You better start studying that. Anyway, the gunmen were armed with automatic weapons, bombs, machetes, and they split the diners into 2 groups. Foreigners were taken to the upper floor, and Bangladeshis were kept around a table. And of course, this is the final 10 days of Ramadan, and it's the most holy in the Islamic calendar, so they're not very...
Well, maybe for them, then they need to get rid of people who are not holy.
And did you know that Bangladesh has a female prime minister? Her name is Sheikh Hasina, and she said, fortunately, she said, anyone who believes in religion cannot do such act. They do not have any religion. Their only religion is terrorism. Well, that's the truth, because they're programmed mind control terrorist slaves. And I will also add to that that most of the victims killed were Italian and Japanese. And there were 3 students from American universities. They are not really American. They're from other countries, but they were studying in American universities.
And they were killed.
And they were killed. Next, let's talk about Michelle Obama. Because while this was going on, Michelle and her 2 daughters, who I think are adopted, because they don't look anything like either one of them.
And also her mother. Her mother goes everywhere. This is all at taxpayers' expense, of course.
Well, that's my whole story is about that, because they followed in their mothers according to the stylish footsteps. I don't consider her stylish. She looks like a gorilla in a dress. I'm sorry. And I'm not being racist. She just looks like a freaking gorilla in a dress. And they went to Spain on Friday, and it says Sasha, 15, and Malia, 17, looked chic in black dresses while boarding their private plane with their mother and grandmother. Who is paying for that? Who paid for their stylish dresses, and who paid for the private plane, which, by the way, was an American government jet?
And who paid for the grandmother.
Yeah, right. And Malia opted for an A-line little black dress, whilst her younger sister chose a boho black sundress for the trip home, and mother chose a black and white dress with a graphic print. Well, black and white is IS programming, and I'm sure that was part of what the thing was.
It's actually interesting you say that, because I saw some of those pictures and they showed Michelle Obama and of course she is very black,
And
then
big.
she's
a big man woman.
And in this white dress, and then Letitia of Spain wore a red.
She looked beautiful.
She looked very beautiful.
She was a very lovely lady.
But she's still part of the Illuminati.
Yes, but she's pretty much.
And so here we have red, black, and white that was being shown all over.
And really, Michelle, you should not have stood next to her, because it made you look really bad. Really bad.
Made Letitia look very good.
Well, she would look good anyway. And they had been originally to Liberia, Morocco, and then to Spain to promote girls' education in poorer countries and raise awareness of gender inequalities, well, we know why she did that one, as part of the Let Girls Learn initiative. Now, did you ever hear the Let Girls Learn initiative? It's apparently a U.S. government initiative that the First Lady launched with President Barack Obama in 2015, only a year ago. So here's my question. How about boys in poor countries or adults that need to learn? How about those people?
Well, I want to know how much money this Let Girls Learn program is giving.
And how is that, and dressing in, thousands of dollars in clothing each outfit, how is that going to help these girls learn anything except to learn to be?
And well, they're not going to give those girls money, and then
Right.
plus they're flying around the world. What did that cost?
Right. It reminds me of what's her face,
Oprah
Oprah
Winfrey.
Winfrey with her South African
Girls'
fiasco school where
That's still
only
going.
the snooty, snotty girls could get in there.
No, that's still going.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of problems with that, but you don't hear about that anymore. It's like, why don't we do this in America? We have a lot of girls here in
I mean,
America.
seriously.
Poor girls who need an education, who need funding.
Yes, right. You know what I think? Why they went to Morocco?
Why?
I think they adopted one of the girls from Morocco because she looks like the queen. I think.
It's possible.
One of the daughters looks like one of the Moroccan leader's daughters, so I think they went there to see her mommy, her real mommy.
It's possible.
Anyway, let's talk a little about Istanbul, where 44 people were killed in the airport attack and 240 were wounded. I was in that exact spot. And when I was there, I thought, this is a good place to blow people up because they're all corralled in here. We all have to go through this little scanner to get into the airport. So what if someone had something here? I thought that when I was there. So it's a very scary place. And did you know when after it happened, the Turkish government blocked social media, they said for security reasons, but then people couldn't communicate. So it says they were not allowed to use Facebook, and because of that, they couldn't get the news. And now, they said, people are looking at each other like suspects. If you wear a leather jacket in the summer, which why would you do that? Or if you have a beard. Oh, if you have a beard.
Or motorcyclists would wear leather clothing in the summer.
Yeah, so now I can't go to Turkey anymore. Anyway, it's interesting that this happened, the Turkish explosion in Istanbul airport, one day after Turkey and Israel reestablished their ties with each other. That's very interesting. Because remember what I said, people? Those of you who remember, I said that Israel and the U.S. want to remove Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, to punish him and to cause a rebellion in Turkey to remove him. And there we go, day after the Israelis came back. Let's come to the United States now, because we talked about in the past what's going on in California, what's going on with the weather, all this stuff. So there's a news article that says the Lassen volcano, which is in California, last erupted in 1915, but in an article by a woman named Amy Parker in the Journal of Volcanology and Geothermal Research, that since the mid-1990s, the whole area has sunk. So, they examined satellite data from 1992 to 2010 and found that an area 30 to 40 kilometers across near Redding Peak has been sinking at the rate of 10 millimeters per year. So over the span that they've been checking, it has sunken 18 centimeters or 7 inches. So, land-based information collected by the satellites and also the land base said that for 70 years they found no measurable evidence of subsidence prior to the early 1990s. So it's only a recent event that this area is sinking. That's not a good sign, California.
So what does it mean?
It means that the magma being stored underneath the volcano is doing something. You know, like when there's going to be a tsunami, the waves pull back, and then the wave comes. Well, perhaps in this volcano, the magma shrinks down and then...
That's a possibility.
So if you live near the Lassen volcano, I would get a very strong umbrella. And speaking of umbrellas, let's go talk about the weather. Because, according to the Australian news, not that I put much
That's what I was going to say, this is Australia.
faith in the Australian news,
This
but
is
actually
Australia.
it's correct. Because there's a meteorologist by the name of Paul Dorian who said that the next solar minimum is approaching and there will be an increase in the number of spotless days over the next few, meaning there's no sunspots, and that will affect our climate. And according to this story, as I've already discussed many times, the surface of the sun is covered in visible dark blemishes or sunspots. The sun goes through a natural solar cycle every 11 years, and each cycle is marked by an increase or decrease of sunspots. And with the highest number of sunspots called a solar maximum, and the lowest a solar minimum. And whenever there is a solar minimum, it means brutally cold weather is on the way. And according to this, it says that this leads us to believe that the next mini ice age is on its way. Hello, global warming people.
Well, it's climate change.
And so I put together 4 factors that people need to pay attention to now in the northern hemisphere. Well, first we have the solar minimum, no sunspots. Then we have La Nina forming in the Pacific, means cold water. Then we have the cold spot growing in the North Atlantic Ocean that nobody knows why it's growing. And finally, we have increased volcanic activity globally, which I reported on a couple of weeks ago, which means there's more ash in the atmosphere. So when you put all those things together, they mean the winter of 2016-17 in the Northern Hemisphere will be extremely, extremely harsh, especially in North America, Europe, and Asia. So, get your woolies ready.